The hacker, ETHBarcelona. Public infrastructure, ETHBarcelona. Connecting everybody together. So it's really about starting the cultures, leave it better than you found it, right? Non-profits to make profit. Really, truly an altruistic. Could we have war without banks payrolling it? Provide value for society. Sell everything I own and become a hippie. DAOs will be to corporations as democracies were to monarchies. Ended up getting a master's degree in digital currencies, and we built a community. We hacked the DAO for the rest of the money. We had to give that back to everybody. The only hack where everybody won, giving people agency and making things fun. Focusing on what we needed to focus on, giving people agency and making things fun. Reward value creation, co-opetition, create sustainable regenerative commons, governments and taxes out of the equation, actual design validation, crypto evolution. The whole game felt rigged. I don't even understand why we have to pay taxes. Value for society needs to be appreciated. People who provide value are...
Hello. Hi. Hi. Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming, and I wanted to introduce you to our next speaker, Lefteris Karapetsas, and the project is Rodki. Thank you so much for coming, and welcome to ETHBarcelona and the Forest stage. Okay, welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So everybody, welcome, good morning, welcome to Barcelona. I'll start by speaking to you about what I've been babbling about since I can remember, so building open source and local first applications. And if we have time, we will also see a bit about Rodki, which is one. So first we will try to speak about what is open source, then what is this local first thing that I keep talking about, define what I mean by data ownership, then talk about what is the problem with most of the applications that exist right now, which are closed source software as a service, what is a proposed solution, and yeah, as I said, if we have some time, we'll go over such a solution with Rodki. So, open source, right? This word fills the mouth. It's like a word full of hope and happiness and nice stuff. But it doesn't really mean that if the code is open, then the project is open source. This is something that many people seem to misunderstand. And I wanted to set it straight from the very beginning. If the code is open, that does not make a project open source. So what is then open source? There is many definitions. The most widely accepted one is this one by the Open Source Initiative and the Free Software Foundation. So in order for something to be open source, it needs to be freely redistributable. So you can take the code and just give the project away. The source code, of course, must be open. So that is the open part of open source. You should be able to create derived works from it. You should maintain the integrity of the author's source code. So if the author doesn't want you to modify it, you would need to, you are still able to, but you would need to have the patches separately. There should be no discrimination against persons or groups. So you cannot say something like, I don't know, like Asian people shouldn't use my software or something stupid like that. Again, no discrimination against fields or endeavors. So if you are one of these crypto hate people, you cannot say that I make this library and it should not be used by crypto projects. That would not be open source. The license should be distributed along with the software, and it must not be specific to a certain product. So, yeah, I'm working on Rodki, and I say this software can only be used by by the Rodki product. That you cannot fork it and call it Rodki and distribute it. The license should not restrict other software in the same medium, and it must be technology neutral. So again, you cannot say not used by crypto projects, it should not be used by Intel CPUs, etc. So if the code being open doesn't make it open source, then what is software that has the source code open? These are called source available. There are many examples. I'm just going to go over a few. So like the business source licenses, you've probably heard of Uniswap and Aave, that their latest iterations have become source, have a business source, so kind of delayed open source. After, I think, 3 years, they can become GPL. other proprietary licenses, so that they ask that the user can use it for hobby purposes, but not for retail. Another example is the SSPL, so the server-side public license by MongoDB. This is probably the most contested one, because it's very, very close to actually being open source, but due to some restrictions and definitions, it is not. Yeah, there's many others. So what is good about open source, though? So why do we care? So with open source, you can involve a bigger community, exactly because it is open and people can modify the code, they can redistribute it, they can play with it. It encourages multiple users, and even users become the developers themselves to get involved with the project. It's transparent. So when you have open source code, you can actually see what it does, and if you have questions about how it handles your data, all you need to do is open the code. They tend to be more reliable and secure and have higher quality. That's mostly for open source projects that have a big community already, because there is many eyes and many developers working on them. This doesn't apply to if I just make a hobby project and have it open source. It doesn't automatically become more reliable, of course. They tend to be more flexible because open source software tend to be more modular. It's a very, very, very great way to attract talent. As a developer, you want to work on open source software because you can show your work off to everybody. You can say, okay, look, that's what I'm working on today. Look at the pull request. This is the review. This is how I work. And this is also very useful for potential future employers. So it's a dream come true for a developer to work in open source. And there is no there is no vendor lock-in. So you don't get locked in a particular ecosystem. It's all great and nice until we start talking about, so how do you make money making open source software? So the funding of open source is one of the biggest problems that the sector has. So you can freely redistribute it, you can modify it. What does that mean? That you as a team that works in open source, how can you, so you have this project, it's your IP, as they say, but it's not really, because by having an open source license, you give it away. This doesn't work in the venture capitalist system that most companies use, because there is no IP. So it doesn't really match with our current way of operating companies. You cannot really sell the software, because another company can just take what you have developed, make spend a bit in marketing, spend a bit in design, and basically outperform you. Anybody can copy it. And with the way that software works nowadays, with API keys that are paid and you can give to users, you cannot really hide API keys in the code. So what are some ideas for funding? You can mix open and closed source code, have some premium components, have some open source components, combine that with a freemium model. One of the most used ones is to sell support. So as an open source team, you know your product the best, and you can support your users. So this is how most open source companies actually make money today. And another idea is donations and grants. And this is like something that Gitcoin has been doing very well and has actually funded open source projects, including the one that I'm working on with Rodki. Then there is the crypto way, which is like a starter token, right? Like, I don't know, governance or something. And yeah, you can do that, but it doesn't, at least in my opinion, it's not a good way to fund the project unless it actually has a utility for the project. So that's about what is open source, but then there is a local first. So what does that mean? Local first is basically any software that runs first and foremost on your computer, and it focuses on protecting your privacy and gives you control over your data. Like, it lets you to own your data. What are the main characteristics? So the network there is optional. It doesn't mean that it should not operate with a network connection. That would be silly. Like, we live in a completely connected world. But it should not be the very first thing that you think about. Many applications right now have, even with a single keystroke, a round trip to a server. This is just ridiculous. The data is mainly kept locally. So all of the important data should have a local backup. You can, of course, always have a cloud backup or whatever, but it's called local first because you emphasize on the local. Exactly because of this, it's also it has a higher focus on security and privacy. A very nice characteristic of a local first software is the long now. So with cloud apps, you cannot really know that you can use it tomorrow. If the company goes bust, if the server goes down, not only your data is probably lost, but so is the application. And you also retain ownership over the data. Regarding data ownership, so there are 3 questions that you need to ask. So where is the data stored? Who has control over them? And how is it handled? For most applications today, the answer here is pretty depressing. So I encourage you to just generally always ask yourself all these questions whenever you use any kind of application. So where does it store the data? Who has control over them? And how are they handled? So then all these are leading us to the problem of closed source applications. So what is the problem? Just a few days ago, there was 1 billion Chinese national names, criminal records, addresses, and phones leaked. Then the ledger data leak. From that, I have learned people in my hometown, in my wife's hometown, and in some other places that I visited, like a baker even, who uses crypto, just because I could look at this. Then the Indian citizens Aadhaar database, OpenSea just a few days ago, First America, financial records, the Equifax data breach, and so on and so forth. So data leaks. When you have applications that store data in the cloud, it's not a question of if, but it's a question of when will your data leak. Another thing is, if you do not have control over your data, you can be deplatformed. For example, here is Amin and Friederike. They both were using a crypto accounting software in the cloud and just went bust. And they lost not only access to the software, but the data that they have been preparing very painstakingly over months of the accounting of their company, just gone. So to summarize, the problem with closed source SaaS is that they control your data. They can sell or they can simply leak your data. You don't need to assume malice anytime. Just a mistake. It can happen. Most of the leaks are because of mistakes. They're not transparent and they require trust from you. They can deplatform you at any time. And, well, they can just stop functioning and then you lose access to the product. While with a local application, you can always just download the latest version and use it. So what's the solution? The solution is a combination of open source, local, and using techniques like encryption. With open source, you have a transparency in functionality and data handling because you can see the code. If not you, then someone else who has knowledge of the particular language that is being used can check it. And of course, the ability to function after the team dies is probably a strong word, but ceases to function. It fits better there. I don't know. I'm not good at making presentations. Then, local software. They help you with retaining the ownership of your data, of course. And they help with privacy. Privacy is a very, very overlooked thing in Web3, especially since people YOLO into everything lately. But if it was data like, I don't know, Instagram photos of what I ate for breakfast, that's fine. But your financial data, and with leaking data of your addresses and all of your transactions, you're basically telling people everything about yourself if you use crypto. And of course, using encryption. Encryption is very good for security and privacy. It's something that we should really make a habit of using in software. So a combination of these approaches is what I believe is the proposed solution to the problem of closed source software. An example of such a solution is Rodki. This is the project that I have been working on, along with my team. Like Jabir is here from the team. And what is it? What are we building? It's a portfolio tracking and accounting tool that is, well, exactly this type of application that I have been talking about. So open source, local, and privacy focused. It looks a bit like this. So you have a dashboard, and you can see stuff about what you have and where, like which blockchains you have balances, which exchanges. If something is not tracked, you can actually make manual input. Then you can drill in further by checking addresses in details. So this is actually from Rodki itself. And you can also drill into specific DeFi protocols. You can also check, and this is like something that most of our users really like, historical data. So you can see historical deposits and withdrawals over multiple exchanges, like here, Kraken, Binance, and how much was moved. Then, of course, trades. So trades performed in either centralized exchanges or in decentralized exchanges like Uniswap. And something that I'm really, really, really proud of, and that we have been working on for some time, and it's finished. I mean, it's not finished. Like the first version is out. It's decoding of Ethereum transaction history. So with Rodki, you have your tracked addresses, and then you can see in human readable form what each transaction you did meant. So here. Oh yeah, that's me claiming my Uniswap airdrop and then selling it. Yes. Maybe I should not have put that slide there. Yeah. So yeah, that's about the history and of course accounting, right? So we also can do accounting. We're not accountants ourselves, so we just generate a profit loss report. We don't make a tax report. It would not be legal in any jurisdiction. So you can do a profit loss report of any period over all of your activity in centralized exchanges, decentralized exchanges, and any manual entries you have. It looks somehow like this. You have all of the entries, and then you can do an export in a CSV format, share it with your accountant, or just put it in an Excel spreadsheet like this, and then send it to the the tax authority, and depending on how competent they are, they will probably not ask any questions and just accept whatever you give them. We also have insights and assistance. So if you use DeFi, like MakerDAO vaults, you can see like a breakdown of your collateral and the collateralization ratio, etc. You can get more information, you can put alerts. So if the collateralization ratio falls below a certain percentage, then you can ask Rodki to send you an email, tell you, you now have to unroll the loan or else you're going to get liquidated. You can see which airdrops you can claim. So if any of your tracked addresses can claim airdrops, then you can see which ones and have links to the claiming page. We have various graphs. This is a graph that I posted the other day on Twitter. It's kind of sad. It's of Polkadot, and so it's the, how do you explain it in English? Oh, yes. So value of the asset over time over the amount. So the brown thingy is the amount, and the blue thingy is the value in euro. So you can see that the guy there sold in December, almost half of it, and he got it until in December 2020, and he got it in 2022 even more, but because of staking. But then the value is, well, the same as it was in, almost the same as it was in 2022. So you can get insights like that. So with that, because time is running out also, I'm going to give you some action items. So we are all about open source. So please join our community in Discord. So this is the link. And work with us in order to make open source local software the standard. Please download and try Rodki, of course. Follow us in Twitter. And as I said, we use a kind of premium, freemium model. So you can buy premium and support us. And we're also hiring. So if you are working in Python or even Vue.js and TypeScript, then please talk to me later, or anybody watching this from home, send me a DM in Twitter or come in Discord. And if you're really good in Python and you're a senior engineer, I'm trying to find a CTO to allow me to take vacation. So that would be really, really cool. Thank you so much. Enjoy sunny Barcelona and go for a swim.
Vieira from Moonbeam, please come to the stage. Give him a hand. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. All right, let's see if the slides are up. There we go. All right, cool. Well, thanks a lot for the invitation. It's really exciting to be in Barcelona because I live in Barcelona, so it's the first event that I don't really have to travel quite a bit. So I'm here to talk to you about Moonbeam, and the title is Bootstrapping an Interoperable Ecosystem on Polkadot. My name is Alberto, and I work at Developer Relations in the project Moonbeam. So today, the agenda is going to be very brief. It's only 20 minutes. So we're going to start talking about Polkadot because I really like self-contained content. And so, we're going to talk a very brief intro about Polkadot and its architecture. Next, we're going to talk about Moonbeam. What is it, and what makes Moonbeam special, among all the different EVM chains out there. And last but not least, we're going to talk about interoperability. What does it mean, and why is it important in today's world? I really like the meme on the right-hand side. It's a Doge meme. I mean, who doesn't like the Doge? And so the idea that Moonbeam is basically brings Ethereum developers closer to Polkadot, and that's why I usually include it in all my slides. But yeah, let's talk about Polkadot, and it'll be 1 minute, so you won't be an expert in Polkadot after my presentation, but the idea is to give a little bit of a context, because a lot of people don't really know what Polkadot is still. So the main idea about Polkadot is specialization and connectivity, right? There is no one blockchain to rule them all. There's no one blockchain that is best of all the blockchains. There are many best blockchains out there, and the idea of Polkadot is that it's called the relay chain, or a layer 0, and it's basically an idea of being a blockchain for other blockchains, right? There is basically Polkadot connects and secures these specialized blockchains that will connect to Polkadot. These blockchains are actually called parachains, and the term comes from parallel chains. And so the idea here is that you have specific chains that provide specific functionalities to a whole broader ecosystem. So you will see parachains, for example, specialized in privacy, parachains specialized in storage, in oracles, in bridges, and so on. And so Moonbeam is one of these parachains, and I'm going to be a little bit more detailed in the following slides. But Polkadot has one really important promise, right? It's not just another blockchain. It's basically a blockchain for blockchains. And so one of the promises is this connected security, meaning that when we projects connect to Polkadot, we don't have to worry too much about consensus, about which is the next block or what is the right next block. That is provided by Polkadot and its economic game or whatever. But the other main promise about Polkadot is XCM, or the idea that all these members of the ecosystem will be able to natively interoperate. And the keyword here is natively, because right now there are many blockchains out there that can interoperate with each other through bridges, but there's always a middleman, a risk, basically, a risk network in the middle that you have to rely on in order to communicate. Within the Polkadot ecosystem, you're able to natively interoperate because you're already trusting Polkadot for consensus, right? So that is the two main promises that Polkadot gives you. And so now the question is, what is Moonbeam? Because the project is still very new, people are still like getting to know what Moonbeam is. And so the idea here is, once again, to give you a brief introduction about what Moonbeam is. And so we know that there are a lot of EVM chains out there. You have Ethereum, you have Avalanche, you have Polygon, right? And so I wanted to make clear like what makes Moonbeam different, right? We don't really like want to compete out there because we think that there's like a multi-chain future, but we want to show like what Moonbeam makes it's different out of all these EVM chains. And so the first element is that we're built with Substrate. And what is Substrate? So it is an SDK that allows you to build blockchains really, really fast and really, really easy. And it's very modular. You can customize it really well. And so the main benefit that we see in Substrate is that we can connect to Polkadot quite easily, right, and benefit from this native interoperability. And so you can see here on the right-hand side how you see basically the EVM as a base layer building block out of an Ethereum-compatible blockchain, but we have added layers of benefits or features. The next feature is full Web3 RPC support. So for non-tech people, what does this mean? This means that you can actually use sort of regular Ethereum tools or wallets. For example, you can use Ledger, you can use Trezor, you can use MetaMask. All these tools natively work on Moonbeam right out of the way, out of the box, because we have a full seamless ETH JSON RPC support. And if you're a developer, this means that you can use Hardhat, Ether.js, Web3 Python, Web3.js, all these open source tools that are, people are used to working with them on Ethereum native chains, right? The next benefit is more against other parachains in the ecosystem is because on a Substrate blockchain, you have the Substrate account scheme, which is different than Ethereum's, right? So it's different than the typical MetaMask address that you see out there. And so one of the things that we did is that we modified the underlying account system so that it's all Ethereum. So this means that on Moonbeam, you will be doing staking, on-chain governance, and interoperability, but you will be using regular Ethereum address. This is to make it full Ethereum compatible. And last but not least, we have developer tools and integrations. So this means that it's an Ethereum dev-like environment, right, with expanded features. So the idea is to make developers feel right at home. They don't have to do anything. They can use Chainlink, for example, that I see marked here. They can use the graph. They can use Etherscan. So a lot of these tools that developers expect, they'll find it in Moonbeam. So composability. For me, this is one of the most beautiful things that it's out there on the blockchain, and Ethereum is probably the best example out of this. What is composability? Is that projects can work with each other and provide basically limitless combinations, right? We see this, for example, on Ethereum when we see, for example, Aave, when a person wants to use Aave and Uniswap or Aave and Sushi and then you have also stable tokens like Frax, or you have derivatives platform and Curve, and a person can leverage all these different tools in a single transaction, in a single interaction or whatever, right? And for me, this is one of the beautiful things about blockchain, and especially about Ethereum, its composability. So one of the things that we noticed that to really offer composability, there was a lot of tooling needed, a lot of dependencies. And so that is why our team worked really, really hard into making sure that you have all the tools that people want and developers want in our platform, in Moonbeam. So that's why, like I mentioned before, as a developer, you can use the Graph and Covalent for indexing, Chainlink, MetaMask Ledger and Trezor, Etherscan. You have a fork of Gnosis if you want to use a multisig wallet, all the developer tools that you expect. But you also have then an interoperability layer that we're really focusing on just to make sort of like an interoperable composability that is powered either by XCM, so the XCM is that like the native Polkadot interoperability protocol, or also GMP protocols, and GMP is general message passing, right? This is what allows, for example, Moonbeam to be communicated with Ethereum, and so we have, for example, Axelar, Polkadot for XCM, and Nomad as a few examples. So that's why we think Moonbeam will be sort of like an interoperability hub, not for only within Polkadot ecosystem, but communicate all Polkadot parachains to the outer ecosystem of blockchain. And so I talked before about EVM with expanded features, right? And what does this mean? And this is important because we're built with Substrate, we have sort of a modular approach that allows us to provide sort of extra features on top of the EVM. And so one example of this is staking. We provide a smart contract, so it's sort of like an interface where developers can do applications and benefit from Substrate features that are not really Ethereum native like staking. The example that you see here is basically the staking Moonbeam dApp, where you can actually stake using your MetaMask wallet. And because you use MetaMask, you can also use Ledger, Trezor, you can use Math Wallet, and other wallets out there. The next feature is on-chain governance. So once again, on-chain governance means that the precompile allows you to do governance features where you can vote on runtime upgrades and other stuff, once again using MetaMask. And this is an interface called PolkAssembly, where you can actually, it's like a forum-based tool where you can discuss ideas, propose ideas, and so on. And you can vote everything using your Ethereum wallets that you've used before. The next one is especially interesting for developers because it allows you to access the native token. So for example, Glimmer or Mover using an ERC20 interface. So the example that you see there is basically that you can add Mover as an ERC20, right? It feels weird because in the wallet, you'll actually see two tokens, like Glimmer there, and then when you add it as an ERC20, you will see Glimmer as well. But this is really cool for developers because they don't need to do the wrapping and unwrapping that you do on DEXs, for example. This is a feature that we actually released like past month, I think, which is a batch precompile. So it is a way for developers to batch a lot of Ethereum transactions in one single Ethereum transaction. And I don't know if you guys have ever used like a DEX that you actually, for example, to swap a token, you have to approve it, and then you have to swap it, right? It's usually a two-step process. Using the batch precompile, developers can actually do this action in one signature, basically. And this is really powerful because I don't know if you've ever used Ocean Protocol, but when I was testing it around, you had to sign like 5 transactions or something like that. And so the UX is not really great. So we really think that this will improve the UX in this case, for example. And last but not least, we have XCM-related precompiles. So these are smart contracts that allow developers to access sort of like interoperability features. And the first project that actually used this was Lido when they launched basically liquid staking for KSM and for Polkadot. And they actually did it through Moonbeam and Moonriver, depending on the chain that we're talking about. And once again, you do this from Moonbeam or Moonriver using your wallet, your regular wallet. So interoperability and Polkadot and XCM. So the idea here is that this is the current status of interoperability. In the left-hand side, you'll see Kusama, and in the right-hand side, you see Polkadot. And this is for the 4th of July because this is constantly changing. So you can see on the left-hand side, all these little dots are different parachains. Remember that parachains are blockchains in the ecosystem. And all the lines that you see there are that they're already bridges or like connection channels between these parachains. So you can see already all the interactions that is happening natively within the ecosystem. There's no trusted middleware there. On Polkadot, it's a little bit more recent, and so that's why you see less. There's actually quite a few dots, quite a few blockchains, but there are not a lot of channels yet. But we still see some channels with Moonbeam there. We see also Hydra, Kala, Statements, or other participants in the ecosystem. And the main use case right now that we've seen is basically remote transfers. And the way this works is that, let's say a user wants to bring DOT from Polkadot to Moonbeam to use it on a DEX, for example, right? So the way this works is basically that a user will basically just transfer his DOT through a special transaction to an account that is owned by Moonbeam as a blockchain. It is not owned by a single person or a smart contract or an entity. It's basically owned by the whole blockchain, and so the only way that you can actually move it out of there is through governance, right? So it's not easy. And so Moonbeam will actually verify that these tokens exist in this special account, and it will just create a new representation, basically a piece of paper saying, hey, Alberto transferred 10 tokens to this special account. And it's going to create basically 10 wrapped representations. Another use case is remote execution, and this is what actually Lido is doing to be able to stake on Kusama and Polkadot from Moonbeam or Moonriver. The way this works, I'm not going to go into detail, but basically the idea is that a user using MetaMask, Ledger, or whatever other wallet will actually interact with the Lido contracts. And then basically Lido is going to empower, like it's going to use this extra features that we offer in the EVM to actually talk to Kusama or Polkadot and tell Kusama or Polkadot, hey, this user wants to stake 1 Kusama or 5 dots or whatever. But the cool thing about here is that this is happening trustlessly and in a decentralized fashion using an action that started, an action that started on the blockchain by a single user using a single transaction, right? Which is actually a great user experience. And last but not least, and this is still experimental, but this is one of the ones that excites me the most, is remote EVM calls. So the idea here is that you have Moonbeam, for example, as a hub, as a core basically member of this remote EVM calls, and then other blockchains can actually, through XEM, basically call our EVM to do logic, for example, right? So you can see other projects like Centrifuge on Polkadot call Moonbeam's EVM to do some logic on certain smart contracts. This is actually something that we're actively working on, and we have sort of like a demo, but it's not public in production. So Polkadot and XEM. XEM, Polkadot plus Moonbeam, right? So the main idea here is to explain why we always look for Ethereum compatibility, right? So right now, if you're a parachain or you want to interact with sort of these like interoperable assets or tokens, the main problem for Ethereum developers and users is that they have to know Substrate. They have to know the Substrate API, and they have to know how to interact with it, which is not really something that is really common today. So the way that Moonbeam approaches is by basically adding an ERC20 interface, right, on top of the Substrate asset. So the Substrate asset is a thing that it's interoperable, that you can swap it around the ecosystem. But the problem is that, for example, you cannot add it to MetaMask. So we added sort of this Ethereum compatibility layer on top of these assets so that developers can interact with it using the regular Ethereum tools that they know and love, but also users can add it to like MetaMask or interact with it on DEXs, right? And this is a standard that we called XE20. It's nothing official. It's just a name that we put. And so the cool thing here is that, for example, in the Moonbeam dApp, you can add Polkadot to MetaMask, and you can see here that this user has basically almost 1.1 dots and can send it as a regular ERC20. Or the person can also swap it on a DEX and so on. Which, it's a really cool feature because if you've ever held DOT, you have to have a separate wallet, you have to have Polkadot.js extension, and it's really hard to interact with it and so on. And so the current status of assets on Moonbeam and Moonriver, so Moonriver is our blockchain, our parachain in the Kusama ecosystem, is that we can see that we have, for example, 92,000 KSMs in there logged in DeFi protocols, in DEXs, in lending, in staked, for example, tokens. We also have Remark, which is a pretty famous NFT project in the ecosystem. We have over 2.5 million remarks logged in Moonriver. And this is all, like I said before, trustlessly in a decentralized fashion without no relayers or middlemen. On Polkadot and Moonbeam, you can expect that it's a little bit different because the integration is a little bit newer. But nevertheless, we almost have 1 million dots already logged in Moonbeam. And we have so Akala, AUSD, and Parallel. But we have many more coming in the near future. So connected contracts, and I think this is one of the last slides. So this is sort of like a new approach that we're actually taking into this interoperable world. Because, like I said before, we don't think there's one best blockchain out there. We think that there will be many blockchains with many communities, many different developer communities as well. And so we think that it's important that in the future, there's sort of like this idea for developers and for users that users won't really see sort of like this, oh, am I interacting with this blockchain or this other blockchain? They will just interact with an application, and developers will have the tools, and that's the actual problem that we have right now, that the tools are not there yet, but developers will have the tools to improve the UX in a way that there will be interoperability that the user will really won't see, basically. So the idea here is that they can use Moonbeam as a hub, for example, to interoperate within Polkadot, like what Lido did before, but they can also use general message passing protocols such as Axelar and Nomad to also talk to other blockchains out there. So we're seeing one of these examples is that Axelar, I think it's a project, will actually bring DOT to the Cosmos ecosystem, and they will do it through Moonbeam. So this is one of the other use cases that we'll start seeing where projects are leveraging Moonbeam and this sort of like interoperability scenarios to actually move assets across systems, right? And the idea is that the user will just say, I want to move, 2 dots to this Cosmos dApp or whatever, and everything will be taken care of for that. That's it for me today. I do have 1 minute. I don't know if someone has a specific question that wants to ask. But if not, please visit our website. You can find all the social channels there. Visit our documentation site if you're a developer. It'll help you get started. You have our Telegram channel, which is always full with people asking questions, our Discord, and our Twitter. I didn't put all the social medias that we have, but we also have YouTube, Reddit. So please visit our website, moonbeam.network, where you actually find all the social channels. You can find today's presentation on the QR code, but it's also very easy. It's at bit.ly Moonbeam ETHBarcelona 2022. So we actually have a booth right next door. So if you don't have any questions right now, feel free to visit there later, and we'll be around, answering questions, talking about Moonbeam and so on. So yeah, thanks for listening.
Hello again, and welcome to ETHBarcelona's Forest Stage. I wanted to introduce to you Michelle Tui, who is the founder of Swarm City. And please come up. Thank you so much.
Let's go. Hello, 1, 2. Yeah, it's working. Hello, good morning. So I'm Michelle. Yes, that's me. I want to talk about unstoppable marketplaces, but then I got like really insecure about it because I actually want to make like the most of this talk, and so I changed. I want to change the title in "Is Your DAO Fascist?" But then my friends told me like this is way too radical, so I made it like "Markets Create Healthy Communities." So I made this presentation with two of my friends in Swarm City, Kiki and Matt, and I want to thank you both for helping me out. Because actually, this is not a presentation on a project, this is not a presentation on a tool or anything, it's basically just the things I've been thinking about a lot in these past couple of weeks, and I wanted to use this time to share this with you. So if you are someone like me who is like distracted and bored after 5 minutes, this is my presentation in three steps, basically. So if it's too long and you didn't listen, if you remember this, it's perfect. So I will be talking about how people need things to survive. We all do. And then the second part of my presentation will be about how I think voting without skin in the game is worthless. And then I'll make the argument that markets are a way better way to create healthy communities. My presentation is like 10 minutes, so I mean, it's not that it has 3 parts that I will be speaking for an hour. So my illustration is not loading. This sucks. Anyway, so there was an illustration here about Maslow's pyramid. You all know this probably. This really sucks, my illustrations are not there. Anyway, so humans need things to survive. No one of us can make everything and can do everything. And so there's 2 ways for us to get this stuff. It's basically through peaceful trade, or it is through force, which is theft. Voilà, I suggest you look up Maslow's pyramid yourself, as it is not showing here. So survival can be social or can be anti-social. Humans interact to get stuff for their survival, and these interactions can be social or anti-social. Voilà. Humans are a social species, and so, in my opinion, it is better to exchange goods in a social way. None of us are like Renaissance people, so we need each other to get the best for ourselves and for humanity. Trade is preferable to theft. So trade is a voluntary exchange of value, and it's social, and it's good for all of us. So in my illustration here, I had an old painting of people negotiating and talking to each other and exchanging goods to get services and knowledge. And so markets is where this trade happens. Markets show where humans, their preferences. By buying and selling stuff, they actually signal to the higher cause what they need. Just saying something doesn't mean anything because there is no skin in the game. So, in my opinion, this is worthless. So, here I want to make the point that markets actually are a way of governance. The illustration you see here, and I'm happy my illustrations seem to be loading. Oh God, let me just go back. I just want to show you these illustrations. So this was Maslow's pyramid, as you know. So here is like can you even see it? So this is like a really important illustration for me personally, because I'm from Flanders in Belgium, and like a few hundred years ago, the Spanish not the Catalans, but the Spanish. They kicked in doors and they raped people in my home country. They looted us, and they basically were really nasty. And in my city of Antwerp, for instance, there's still like many references to that. So they were very antisocial. They just came and basically with force took whatever they wanted. So humans are social species. Here you see what I think are Neolithical people trying to create things, and they start, using their talents to build tools. So here was my slide about trade is preferable to theft. Here you can see like a painting of people, very peacefully writing books, exchanging ideas. This is the place I want to be. And so markets are where trade happens, right? I wanted to illustrate this with this illustration that is like really old. As you can see, I opted for old illustrations because then you can see that we have been doing this for a very long time. So the fun thing is on this slide, on the bottom part of this illustration, you can see that people are making pots and ceramics and pans and trading it. But on this second level, there's actually healthcare involved. I don't know if you can see it, but there's like a sort of a dentist, and on the other side there's a chiropractor, I think. And they're like, so from this marketplace, people come there, and there's also doctors and teachers, etc. So now we're back to where I was. Markets are governance. People actually choose what they value through buying stuff. And this is a really good example, I think, somewhere in the 60s or late 50s, I don't know. The Beatles, I hope you know this band. It was like a pop band. Okay, no, there's a lot of young people here. So they had like the top 5 of the Billboard was all Beatles. Can you imagine this, like in today's world? Imagine that like the Spotify top 5 is like just one artist. And so you can clearly see that people express their cultural preference even through buying stuff. Or it's like by radio plays, but bear with me, So the point I want to make is, and this is maybe the most important part of my presentation, is like put your money where your mouth is. So what does it mean to vote in a DAO, for instance, if you have no skin in the game? Does it mean anything even? What does your vote mean if it's based on how much tokens you have in a project, right? Or if it's based on how much money you have? And this is a really important thing, I think. If your vote, if you as a voter are not affected by the outcome of the governance, is it even legit? And this is what we see in today's politics. In Belgium, for instance, and I should not say this, but I don't think politicians in Belgium are watching this. But in Belgium, politicians are now voting on the pension stuff. And the crazy thing is that they are not affected by it. They have a separate agreement on how their pension will be paid in the future. But still, they are now making sure that people don't get pensions, or like as little as possible. So they are governing people, but they are not affected by it. So this is, like, in my opinion, that they have no legitimacy at all. Sorry. So another thing is like if we just ask people to vote, we have seen this in the last couple of years. It's like easier than ever, and this is, I want to stress this because it's like really easy to manufacture consent and to create an opinion for you. You probably all think like, this doesn't affect me, I'm like a very skeptical thinker, I'm smart and blah blah, but it does. The whole point is that you don't notice it. You all have opinions that are based on nothing and that were put in your mind through Twitter and all these social media shit stuff. And it only takes a very small minority to sway the agenda. And this is Twitter, for instance. Like in America, Twitter is just, it's not tiny, but compared to Facebook, it's a small social network. Still, Twitter decides what people talk about. I know this from personal experience. If you haven't noticed, I am transgender. And there's like a lot of stuff going on in media and everywhere. People are talking about transgender, which is like really weird to me because, I mean, I feel like I can talk about being transgender, But there's like, I don't know, everybody is now talking about this thing, like, can they do sports, can they do this, can they do that? Which is like really weird, because most people are not transgender, so why do you even care? But anyway, and so it only takes a small minority. It's way harder, and I also speak from experience, it's way harder to entice people to spend their money. I used to be in marketing and in advertising, and it's really hard actually to make sure people spend their money in a certain way. It's way easier to change people's opinions, and this is why I chose the illustration of Bernays' booklet of propaganda. It was written in the 30s, I think. Please correct me on that. And it very clearly explains how you can put an opinion in someone's mind without these people knowing it even. He was like I think he was family of a Nazi. So I'm just asking this question to you all. What is a better way to build a community? Is it through voting with skin in the game? Without skin in the game? And just, having an opinion, being like politicians, coming together around political ideas, ideologies, opinions? Or is it better to get the signaling from a community through the market, through what they actually want and need? I, of course, believe the second one is the better way to do that. And I think I just wanted to share this thought with you that it's just a call. I think we should really, really carefully think about what kind of future we are building with DAOs and with other tools, and make sure we don't end up in sort of fascist scenarios where people's opinions and their ideology is merged with what they want to achieve and how they want to do it. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to share with you guys. I have 7 minutes left, so if anyone else wants to come up and talk or do a debate or something, that would be awesome. Thank you so much.